I haven't done anything, but I kind of knew that you weren't going to have too much to offer up either, but I figured we could maybe, instead of talking about recent hikes, what's the intel on road closures right now? So I know Hurricane Mountain Road is closed. I think Bear Notch is closed as well, but like, what about the other biggies like
Mount Clinton?
Yeah, Mount Clinton. What is there? Zealand. What are you hearing about road closures? Anybody?
Honestly, anybody. Fair game.
I did hail last week, and Zealand was still open.
Zealand was okay. Yeah. There is a website, isn't it? Just U.S. Forest Service website that covers that.
There is, yeah. I think there's a little bit of a delay on the website, but I will put that in the show notes. I just figured it's getting to be around that time, so
it is.
People got to start thinking about road closures.
Yeah, and just last night, the Notch got some snow, pretty much north of the Notch, like Cannon and Carroll County, I guess, way up north, got some snow, so that's pretty cool.
I did Flume a week ago, and 93 was still open.
Bummer. Oh my God, every time we drive by that trailhead for Old Bridle Path, it's like miles in every direction, so many people coming up.
I know, it's crazy.
How about 16? We should close 16 too.
That should be the first.
That's awesome.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
All right, I'm rolling. I just pressed record, so.
All right, so let's pick it up. So Stump, we have like guest in the Woodpecker studio. Like, this is unheard of. What can you describe?
Isn't this wild?
What is happening up there?
I have no idea. Well, I mean, we have. They just came walking in off the street, and I said, "Hey, you guys want to jump in on a podcast?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." I don't know what they're going to talk about, but
we've hiked Mount Major.
All right. Well, that means you're an experienced hiker then.
Yeah, this is the first live session with the new gear that we purchased with the donations, and thank you very much, everybody. We're actually rocking and rolling, and I know the headphones don't sound as bright, but here it sounds intense, so it's going to be
they sound really good.
Okay, good. So it's going to be nice and crystal clear, and hopefully Mike can get his act together on his side. Do you want to tell him about that story?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had another audio issue, so when we do these podcasts, I have a microphone, and then I also obviously go off my computer, and sometimes I forget to switch my audio from my computer to my microphone, so the audio sounds like hell. So I've had a couple of incidents, but we're cleaning it up, and it will never happen again, I promise. But
yeah.
But Stomp, actually, just to start the show off, I got a question from somebody about they basically were they listened to a show a couple of weeks ago, and it was probably you, because it wasn't me, I'm sure, but we were talking about when you're an experienced hiker, and they basically messaged us, and they were like, what do you guys consider to be the definition of an experienced hiker? And I was kind of like, I don't really know, but I was like, let me ask Stomp on one of the shows to see what he has to say.
Huh. Well, I guess it's somebody that has a base level of confidence and foundational knowledge to say, okay, I'm going to do this hike. I need this gear in my pack. I'm going to check the weather out. I know what the weather's going to do. So somebody that plans appropriately and has, most importantly, backup plans if something is to go wrong or unexpected up there. I think that's part of my definition.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, it's not bad. Ken, Ian, any thoughts on what you would use for a definition?
That's a pretty good definition. I know one thing that I've experienced in my hiking journey is that I never give myself enough credit. And looking back at the things that you do, you kind of have to realize that you do have experience and just kind of enjoy some things.
Yeah, that's true too. That's a good angle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it much, but I guess I would sort of go by, everything that you guys covered there. But I would also say that when you get to the point where you're experienced, I suppose you've seen enough sketchy situations where you can not panic if something goes wrong. I guess that's kind of like and I also think like geography matters too. Like I think you need to get a taste of enough of the geography of a particular region. So that's why I think like, a couple of times up on the Prezzies, a couple of times, across the different ranges of the White Mountains, and maybe you get like halfway through a list or something like that, and then that's the point where you sort of can start saying like, yeah, I got some experience. I've seen enough where I can handle like 95% of the things that come up.
That's a good point. Yeah. Certainly, a completion of a list is a good way to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think part of experience also is knowing your boundaries. When those red flags come up for you and that's pushing the envelope for you, then, you're just a little bit wiser in that situation.
Yeah.
That's actually a good one. Actually, is you think about it like you see this so many times. What we do, the search and rescue news, so many times like people just walk past that point where they got themselves in trouble, and sort of knowing like ahead of time that, okay, I've seen enough here where this could be hairy and I've got to turn around. Like I think that's another good point, is that's when you get you can say that you're experienced.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Snob. So any updates on sponsor? Oh, you want to do the sponsors and any coffee updates for us?
Yeah, we got one just about 5 minutes ago. And it's by Kathleen, I believe you would pronounce it. And she donated 5 coffees. And she actually goes into a lengthy thing that I have to read here, if you guys don't mind. It'll just take a second. It was too long for the platform to actually capture it. So here it goes. I love your podcast so much. Good information and advice. Please, plus very entertaining. You make a great team, and your interaction style really works. Stomp, I'd love it if you do a show about PT exercises that could potentially help strengthen muscles specifically used for carrying a pack. I have multiple back issues and have been doing Pilates for a long time, trying to keep my core strong, but a 50-something, sometimes a loaded backpack is a literal pain in the neck. Last week's episode, that's probably the good starting point for that. We may be doing some deeper dives into some of these issues. So thanks for the comments and the donation, and I hope you enjoyed the PT episode. And of course, we have Nick Rouleau, who donated to New Hampshire Outdoor Council, and he's a general contractor locally. He does decks, additions, remodeling, windows, and doors. His number is 603-325-1661. And then last but not least, we want to thank Reckless Brewery, the best brewery, in my opinion, up in the North Country, up in Bethlehem. Minutes from all the major hikes, and some of the best craft beer you'll have.
Very good, Stomp. So anything else before we get into the show summary here?
Yeah, this is a Thanksgiving episode, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so I've got a treat for you. It's a tick joke. Are you ready?
Okay.
The guests are already primed up for this one. Here we go. Ready?
Boy, here we go. Bethlyn's going to be so excited if she's listening.
Why wasn't the tick hungry on Thanksgiving?
I give up.
It was already stuffed. Oh, it's so bad.
I don't understand.
I should have said gorged, I guess.
Okay,
but that didn't work, so I had to do a hybrid turkey joke with a tick joke. So,
well, you know what's
good I got for you.
You've maintained your streak of awful tick jokes, so I'm proud of you.
No problem. Hey, moving on.
All right, moving on. So let's do the show summary here. So tonight we return to a theme that we've touched on before on the show. So, and that theme is that hiking is an activity that is open to everybody, and people can often achieve accomplishments in hiking that they never thought possible. So tonight we are joined by Ken Bosse, who is a local author and hiker who will join us to talk about his new book that he just recently published. And in addition to his new book, Ken has also written a prior book called They Said It Would Be Fun, a hilarious journey Learning to Hike. And that the focus of that first book was on the 4,000 footers. This new book is on the 52 with a view. So I had first learned of Ken when I discovered his first book and read his stories about hiking the 4,000 footers of New Hampshire. He shared his challenges, doubts, and his stories of friendship while pursuing the 4,000 footers. He's now moved on to the 52 with a view list, and we're going to spend some time talking about both books and his experience hiking in New Hampshire. In addition to Ken, Ian, who is one of his friends who joined him on most of his hiking adventures, is also here to talk with us. So we're excited to have both of them on here. And then later in the show, Ken and Ian will sit in with us while we cover some recent search and rescue news. And if we have time, we'll dig into a couple of topics of White Mountain history. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right. Very good. So Stomp, beer talk here. So did you give them beers? Or, I don't know if they drink. I mean, if they don't drink, you can give them tea, whatever.
I didn't, but I will offer what I'm going to try in a moment. My wife came back from North Conway today, Tamworth area. That's pretty close. And it was her Nana's 90th birthday, so she brought back a bunch of wine and leftover food and stuff like that. And because you're a pastor, I couldn't believe this coincidence. This red wine is called Seven Deadly Red. Wrath, greed, envy, vanity, sloth, gluttony, and lust. And isn't that funny? It's a red wine it's called Seven Deadly Red. So there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that weird? There are no coincidences. So if you'd like some, I will certainly pour you some. How about you, Mike? Anything?
So I talked about last week how I am, right now I am tied up with my honeydew list. So I've been working on, I just got new stairs installed for my basement, and the contractor did a great job, but he is not a painter or a finish person. So I'm doing all that work. So I've been running around. Last week I emptied the refrigerator of all of the hard seltzers that my wife bought over the summer that she didn't like. I didn't have any beers, and I just haven't got a chance to get out to go and get new beers. But my wife had stopped. The second I finished these hard seltzers that have been sitting in the refrigerator for months, she went out and got like a whole new batch of them, even though she hasn't been drinking them. So I didn't have anything to drink. So I'm drinking a Truly Tropical Punch, which it's kind of awful. So I'm not going to lie. So a little disappointed, but next time I'll run out to the store and get some real beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been somewhat of a stretch now. A couple shows you've been on this terrible stuff.
I know, you can put the shame drop in.
I will. Yeah, I certainly will.
All right. So any recent hikes stop for you?
Unfortunately not. No. The last thing I mentioned was that East Pond Loop. Have you guys ever done that? East Pond Loop? It's up off of Tripoli Road. And it's beautiful. It's the nicest time of the year. Any time of the year, actually. But that's the last time I was out. And how about you, Mike? Anything?
I haven't done anything, but I kind of knew that you weren't going to have too much to offer up either, but I figured we could maybe, instead of talking about recent hikes, what's the intel on road closures right now? So I know Hurricane Mountain Road is closed. I think Bear Notch is closed as well, but like, what about the other biggies like
Mount Clinton?
Yeah, Mount Clinton. What is there? Zealand. What are you hearing about road closures? Anybody?
Honestly, anybody. Fair game.
I did hail last week, and Zealand was still open.
Zealand was? Okay. Yeah. There is a website, isn't it? Just U.S. Forest Service website that covers that?
There is, yeah. I think there's a little bit of a delay on the website, but I will put that in the show notes. I just figured it's getting to be around that time. So
yeah, it is.
People got to start thinking about road closures.
Yeah, and just last night, the Notch got some snow, pretty much north of the Notch, like Cannon and Carroll County, I guess way up north, got some snow, so that's pretty cool.
I did Flume a week ago, and 93 was still open.
Bummer. Oh my God, every time we drive by that trailhead for Old Bridle Path, it's like miles in every direction, so many people coming up.
I know, it's crazy.
How about 16? We should close 16 too.
That should be the first.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't, anyway, yeah, I have the site here, but it doesn't seem to be updated, so we'll keep you posted, people.
All right, so we ready to get into this? Ken, Ian, you guys ready to go? You're going to be the star of this segment.
Yeah. And Daphne's climbing all over Ian right now. She's so funny. She's a 1-year-old cat that we just got about a week ago, and she's just loving the guest. This is crazy. I've never seen her act like this. Honestly, if she's driving you crazy, just let me know. She's like all over this guy.
Yeah, stop. You should send me a picture, Daphne. I'll post it up on the one of the social
Facebook
media sites.
Yeah, absolutely. She's a doll.
It's time for SLASR's Guest of the Week.
I'm going to attempt to sort of do an intro here, Ken, because we haven't met before, but we've had some interactions over social media. So I'm just going to sort of share with the audience right now. I became, and Ken, there's a little bit of a sort of a cool story around. You were a little piece of the inspiration for us to get this podcast going. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, I became aware of Ken. I don't know when did you publish your first book?
2019.
Yeah.
No,
so it was,
2019.
Yeah. So I became aware of you. I think you had posted it in a couple of different groups, and you had posted it in our group, and I immediately bought it, and I was like, I want to read this. So Ken, published a book about the 4,000 footers, and he'll talk. You can talk more about it in detail. But I read the book like the first day I got it, and it's a really funny book. And he breaks it down sort of hike by hike, which I loved because I could sort of compare my experiences. Because a lot of the sort of the way you clustered it was similar to how I had clustered my hikes as well. Mm-hmm. And the book was great. So, but one of the things sort of peripherally that I realized is that it was around the same time that is it Gagne or Gagne? It's Ty Gagne, right?
Oh, Mike.
I forgot the pronunciation.
It's Gagne, my friend.
Yeah, so Ken's book came out, Ty's book came out, and there was a couple of podcasts that, I think there's like one guy that does a podcast about the White Mountains that I listened to a little bit, and me and Stomp had always talked about, like, we want to get a podcast going, but I sort of like it just solidified to me that there was a demand for more sort of media and information about hiking, and that, the social media groups were sort of getting very tiresome and very sort of toxic and annoying, and that other formats, written books and podcast, I think there was an opportunity there. So, Ken, it wasn't like you directly said, go start a podcast, but it was just another sort of validation to me that, like, if I'm out there grabbing a book that you wrote, and I'm reading it in like 24 hours, then, to me, there's got to be more people like that are interested. So it was just another sort of validation to have us start this podcast. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Stomp, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got to know Ken before we get into the interview?
Yeah, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think Ken reached out to me because I don't want to jump this early, but he had a donation to give to Pemmy Search and Rescue, so that's how we ended up meeting. And he actually came to a meeting and talked briefly and made a donation to the team, which he can talk about later. And actually, you had the members in stitches. You were really funny, and that's what it came back. I'm like, we got to get him back on the podcast, especially now that this book is coming around. So, it was fun.
Awesome. So, Ken, why don't you take it away and give a little bit of background? So, don't get too much into the book or the hiking piece of it yet, because we'll get into that. But just a little bit of background about yourself personally, what you do for work, and we'll get into more detail about the books and hiking in a minute.
Sure. Yeah. So personally, I was born at a very young age, and people ask me what sign I was born under, and I say maternity. It was quite an adventure. Doctor slapped me and then looked at me and slapped my mother. So it's kind of how things unfolded. But a little background. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor now for about 31 years at the church I'm in now. I get the fortune of pastoring the greatest congregation in all the state of New Hampshire, in Raymond, New Hampshire. And I'm also a PCC level licensed life coach with the International Coaching Federation. So I coach municipalities and businesses and teams and individuals and couples and I'm also the chaplain for the Raymond Police Department. Oh, and I just gravitated into hiking at one point in my life.
Cool. Well, we'll get into that, and then Ian. So you're tagging along here with Ken. So can you give a little bit of background as well about yourself?
Yeah. So essentially, I was in Ken's church as a kid, and then I ended up going in Florida for a little while. Did some college, and then when I moved back, I got into powerlifting, and I was lifting really heavy, and I was kind of transforming out of that. I wanted to get some more cardio, and he started posting some of the stories for his book on Facebook before his book was a thing, and I got into some of those, and I asked him if I could tag along on a hike, and been on a ton since then with him. It's kind of lit that fire inside of me.
Yeah, that's a weird transition to go from like power. So I have a good friend. I have a couple of friends that are like pretty competitive bodybuilders, and the whole hiking thing for them. They do a lot of fair amount of cardio, but it's a lot of quad rubbing, I think, as they're going uphill. Yeah.
Essentially, with powerlifting, you lift one thing once and then you're winded. So I want something a little more functional than that.
Yeah, exactly. So, Ken, why don't you start? So you already started at the beginning about being born and all that fun stuff. But why don't you talk a little bit about, and I won't give too much away, but you got into hiking later in life. Which you touched on it when you were a little younger, but you got back into it. So can you talk a little bit about your hiking background, and then how you got back into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I think it started with a really lazy pediatrician that made me hike out of my mother's womb. He just left me to do that on my own, and and I think that's kind of like the epitome of hiking, right? You're in a nice, warm, comfortable, safe place close to somebody you love, and you crawl out of that thing into a wet, damp, where you're crying and bleeding and all that, and that's hiking right there. So, but I did a couple of hikes as a teenager with some friends that I had back then, and we did like Lafayette, the Loop, and we did Washington and a couple of big hikes like that, and then just kind of didn't do much after that. Probably until that was probably like at 19 years old. And then I didn't really hike again after that until I was like in my 30s. I did a couple of hikes with my sister and brother-in-law, and my kids were, 8 and 11. So we brought them on a couple of hikes. We did Cannon, and I think we did Lafayette again. Just a couple of little exposures like that, nothing much. And then I really put on a lot of weight. Just being a pastor is like not a lot of physical activity going on there. And so I just started putting on a lot of weight. A lot of weight. It was, my blood type was ragu. It was, I put a pair of BBDs on and the tag on the back spelled Boulevard. It was horrible. But,
hey, these jokes are pretty good compared to my tick joke.
Yeah, he's good. Ken can come in with some tick jokes like that.
So then I kind of got incapacitated to hike, but then at one point in time, I live right by Pawtuckaway State Park in southern New Hampshire. It's right next to Raymond, and so I just started getting into hiking in the park a lot. And there's only 3 mountains there, 800, 900, and 1,000 feet, so nothing super big, but it was big enough for me. And that's that's kind of like how I started into hiking, was just in Pawtuckaway Park. Every chance I got, I'm only like 5 minutes away from the park, so every chance I got, I was out hiking in the park.
Yeah. It's a beautiful area.
Yeah, it's nice.
We used to camp there quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
There is a camp place there.
Oh, yeah, big camp.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the boulder fields. And a lot of rock climbers go in there because there's a lot of rock out there.
Yeah.
A lot of rock.
Yeah, so at some point, Ken, you transitioned from, so you basically were looking to lose weight, and so you were locally doing hikes. At what point what made you click to say, like, oh, I can head north and do the big mountains?
So a couple of things happened. Is one, I hurt myself. I developed plantar fasciitis, and for a year and a half, I couldn't even walk. I just limped everywhere. And if I walked, couple hundred feet, that was it. I was just in excruciating pain. And in our church, we pray for people, and I thought, gee, I should go get prayer. After suffering for a year and a half, light dawned on Marblehead, and I thought, I'm going to. So within 5 weeks of people praying for me, the pain completely went away. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So I went back to Pawtuckaway, and I was crushing it, and I was feeling pretty good. And I thought, gee, I wonder if I could do a 4,000 footer again. Because it was years, you're talking years and years since I've done one. And I had joined Rotary International in Raymond, and that's where I originally met Dave Salois. Dave Salois at that time was the chief of the Raymond Police Department. And I used to be the chaplain years ago, and that kind of like fell apart. He was now a new chief, and so he invited me to become the chaplain of the Raymond Police Department again. And, and I was telling people how I was hiking constantly in Pawtuckaway, and he started telling me that he was hiking up here in the Whites. And, he mentioned the 4,000 footers and stuff like that. So that kind of like got my curiosity going a little bit. And I thought, gee, I wonder if I could go back and do, a 4,000. I'm 59 years old at that time. I was like 59 years old and probably 70 pounds overweight. And I'm like, I wonder if I could do a 4,000 footer, because I was feeling pretty good in Pawtuckaway, So that's how it started.
It's a big difference, though. Yeah, a little bit of a difference in elevation, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding.
And Ken, you did most of your. Is it a crew? Is it 3 of you or 4 of you total? That's it. Your core group of friends.
Yeah. So the way that happened is. When I wanted to do another 4,000 footer, I did Mount Wombat because I heard that was the easiest one. Mm-hmm. Some liars told me that. And so I didn't want to do it alone. So there's this guy I know in my church. He's a little older than me. He was like 10 years older than me, maybe 11, not as good looking. And so I contacted him. And he was in really good shape. He was a jogger. All his life he'd been a jogger, and he was retired. And my schedule, being a pastor, is very flexible. I can take any day off I want and just make up for it later. And so I asked him if he would hike, on this 4,000 footer, and he did. And he immediately recommended that we, after that first initial hike, that we start doing smaller mountains for something that he called conditioning, which was a word I'd never heard before. Conditioning.
It's not what you put in your hair.
No, it is not. So we backed off and we started doing the Belknap Range and the Ossipee Range and stuff like that. And then we went back and we did Jackson and Hale and some of these other first. And then Dave Salois heard that Keith and I were hiking a lot. Now doing the 48. And so he asked if he could go on a hike with us. And now there was 3. And then a few hikes later after that, Ian reached out and said, hey, I saw some of your Facebook posts. I was wondering if I could go with you. And then he started offering money. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So he started hiking. And that's where the 4 of us kind of welded together. And there's been a couple of guys that have kind of like come in and gone out. But, the 4 of us have been basically the consistency of all the hiking that we've done.
Got it. So Ian, you're a lot younger than the rest of this crew, right? So can you talk a little bit of because I'm just trying to think when I was in so you were only like your late 20s when this started. When I was in my late 20s, I can't remember if I had work relationships with older folks, but that was about it. Like, can you talk a little bit about that dynamic? I'm curious. What are you doing hanging out with all these old people?
Ever since I was younger, I always got along easier with older people. I never enjoyed immature stuff my age, really. So I've always gone along with older people. And one of the nice things that I knew when I started out with Ken was that he wasn't going too fast, and I wasn't going too fast either. So I knew that was going to be a good little relationship there too.
Perfect. And did that work across the 4 of you, Ken? Was it any problem with speed or the pace of hiking, or did you guys pretty much kind of work that out?
Yeah, so you can take a still picture of me with a moving camera when I'm hiking, and but Dave, Keith was great. He hiked all the 48 with me, and kudos to Keith. He's now looking at doing the over 70. But Dave came on, and Dave is an athlete. Dave ran marathons, and Dave, he does 75-mile bike runs just to go get, a hamburger or something. He's that kind of guy. So that was a little concerning. because he's fast.
Yeah.
He's in really good shape. And I was in shape, rounds of shape. But that was a little concerning because he could definitely, if he wanted, he could put the pedal to the metal and leave us all behind. But he's a very gracious guy too, so I mean, he was patient to a degree. I didn't like it when he got in the lead because then I knew it was like, oh my God, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Ken, when did you, I guess, so you dipped your toe in the water, you're doing a couple of these 4,000 footers. At what point were you sort of solidified to say, yeah, I can knock this list off? And then at what point did you say, I have a dumb idea, why don't I write a book about this?
So, yeah, I mean, some of the early ones, when you do Hale and you do Tecumseh and you do, you look at the shortest ones and the easiest ones and they were killing me. I mean, I don't think these guys really understand how much I suffered. It was anguish. For me, it was just like a personal, can I even survive? And then after a while, it's like, hey, I think I can do this. Now you're ramping up to doing like the Tripyramids and, Cannon and the Loop and some of the presidentials. And then you think, yeah, I think I can do this, and you save those, you save the bonds for for last.
No kidding,
Owl's
right?
Head and, Owl's Head, there's a treat for you. I mean, what is that, like 16 miles and there's not even a view? It's crazy.
That's a death march for sure.
Is. But, So yeah, that's how it started. And so what was happening is, I was coming home and licking my wounds and like literally it would take me, it was funny because I would come home, have a hard time getting out of my car, limp around for a little while, then I'd feel pretty good. And then like the next 3 days after that, I could barely walk. It was like a delayed reaction. I think my body was in such shock. It was like, we're going to sneak up on you. And so that's when I just started writing these funny Facebook posts. I'd post a couple of pictures of the view and of the trails and of the hike, and then I would write this, this long chapter on Facebook, really funny, just like, this is what happened. I fell in the water and I swallowed 6 black flies and, all the typical stuff about hiking. And people started following that. And then people started like relating to that. And then hikers started, catching up onto some of these pages. And then people were like, you got to put these in a book.
Yeah.
As a furthest thing from my mind, I'm not like a writer. English, I'm like next to science, history, math, and geology. History was my worst subject in school. I mean, I was an honor student. It was yes, Your Honor, and no, Your Honor, and, that kind of thing. But so I just said, all right. I mean, I really didn't think it would sell. And so I'm like, I'm not going to make money of this. And I thought, be a good hook to help sell these is to say, I'm going to donate it all to search and rescue. And it's going to sell these books. And, it actually did. People were like, that's a really cool idea. Like, if I don't like the book, at least I know I did a worthy thing. So
if nobody buys it.
In case nobody buys it, yeah. The only one that's going to suffer from that is search and rescue. So, but so that's how it started. It was like one post after another post. I mean, I had probably had 15 to 20 posts on Facebook. And people were like, you got to start saving these. You got to put these in a book. And I'm like, all right, I'm not an author and, I'm not a writer, but I just said, okay, I'm just going to give it the old fashioned college try and put it together. And a lot of help with different people that helped me edit it. My wife, number one editor, and a couple other people that I know. And it came together, and I didn't know how it was. And, I think one of the biggest negative reviews I got was that it's repetitive. But I kind of, at the beginning of the book, I said, listen, this is 48 stories of 48 hikes. It's not a lot of ways you can tell that story different. And so I said, don't read the whole thing in one sitting. Read a couple at a time and break it up, and then it won't be so repetitive,
Yeah, that's true.
But other than that, it's taken off great. And the money has poured in. We made a big donation to PEMI.
Yeah.
I tried to make a donation to Androscoggin, and I think they canceled their meeting, or they had to do it by Zoom or something, so I wasn't able to actually participate. It was like an annual meeting.
Yeah.
So I need to reconnect with them because I have some money for them. And then everything after that is just going to go to the Outdoor Research Council.
Outdoor Council, yeah. New Hampshire Outdoor Council.
Yeah, they handle all that stuff for you guys, right?
Yeah. Yep, the teams can apply for grants and whatever else, so.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Ian, with Ken, so Ken was struggling on his hikes. How were you holding up?
So I was
because I just envisioned everyone dying and nobody admitting that they were hurting. They all just wanted to sort of be tough in front of each other. So
that's kind of what it was. When Ken was doing his fast pace, I was comfortable.
Okay,
which worked out pretty good. And then, like he said, as long as Dave didn't make his way to the lead, we were doing all right.
Awesome. And then, Ken, at what point did you? I guess what was the, if you don't mind sharing, like, so what was the max weight, and then where did you end up through this hiking journey?
So max weight was probably 280. Okay. And I mean, like, I'm 6'3". I was 6'4". I think that weight pulled me down a little bit. I'm 6'3" now, and gravity, man. So I kind of carried it somewhat well, but you can't hide that much weight. So so in the hiking, I was just killing myself lugging all of this stuff around, as well as my pack and my hydration and all this stuff. And then I thought, like, after a while, I was like, why am I doing this, So Ian's family actually does this competitive weight loss competition. And, everybody pools money together, and whoever loses the most weight wins. And I thought, I'm shallow enough to lose weight for money. And so entered that competition and won. I just dropped dropped 40 pounds, and I started hiking so much better. I actually started finding out what hiking was supposed to be like.
Sure. Yeah.
I'd go do a hike, come back, and I'm like, gee, I can get out of my car. Yeah. And I can walk.
Pretty neat.
No wonder people like this.
Yeah. A little bit of weight can make a huge difference in your speed and endurance, and amazing.
Yeah.
And did you, I guess, as far as like getting onto this journey, did you sort of dial in your gear a little bit differently from the beginning until where you are now? Like, can you talk a little bit about how your gear choice evolved?
That's it, Ian?
Yeah, Ian, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so I started out and I had Walmart pack, giant heavy pack. I started out with the big, heavy Walmart trekking poles because I didn't know how serious I was going to take it. And then I started counting ounces. And then when I did the Sunapee Greenway Trail, that's really when it set into me to start kind of dialing my weight back and pay a little more attention to it.
Mm-hmm. You know what I hate about Walmart, though? Is if they don't have what you want, that means you got to go home and shave, comb your hair, get out of your pajamas, and go to Target.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So, Stomp, one thing that I don't know if you've read the first book or not, but Ken has like an awesome hike rating scale that he uses, which I think we're going to need to like start using that when we talk about our hike. So his scale is it starts at the easiest reference is difficult, and the next one is so difficult it's not worth the patch, and then the worst rating is insanely difficult, stay in bed.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
So
we can definitely we'll use that with your permission, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
That is wicked cool.
It's really good. So you so eventually, Ken, you finished the 4,000 footers. All four of you did the majority of the hikes together. You wrote the book, and you got back in shape a little bit, had some good sort of memories that you generated, and then foolishly you decided to keep going, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I call it a disease. It's a disease. It just gets into your blood, and you can't stop. So I had a lot of people contacting me saying, oh, you've got to do a book on the 52 with a view. And I really didn't even, I guess I had heard about it. I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't really look into it a whole lot. When I started looking into it, I realized that, I had probably knocked off about 20 of them just from doing these conditioning hikes with Keith. So I'm like, oh man, I can do that. I've already got a head start on it. So this time I started, I had to go back to those 15 or 20 hikes that I'd previously done and try to remember as much, because I wasn't journaling on those a whole lot. And so I had to, look into that. And then when from that point on, everyone I hiked, I started taking better notes and a little, and adding different things to it, and getting a lot more scientific into things that were happening in hiking, making better reviews, like how to tell the weather and This book that's coming out, and actually it is available. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it is available already on Amazon. But it does have really good information there on skills that can be developed. And it was. I think I ended up actually doing like 55 because some of them that I had done were delisted, but they still counted. So I went back and did the 52 list, but I had already done 3 delisted ones, so I ended up doing 55 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a similar journey to me because I was like, I think we were doing these lists around the same time. I just finished actually about 2 weeks ago with the 52 with a view and the 4,000 footers. So in your opinion, what is there a difference between these two lists? How do you sort of explain the personalities of these two groups of clusters of mountains?
So I definitely think that there are some easier ones. Obviously Willard is a very popular hike, and it's only a mile. It's only a mile and a half distance, and it's pretty easy the whole going. But I wouldn't say that they're easier because there's some of those 52 hikes that are brutal. I mean, they're just as rugged. The terrain is just as challenging. There's technical aspects to them. They can kick your butt just as much as anything else.
Yeah, that's what I say to people too. Is like Shelburne, Mariah, getting out to the Bald Face Loop,
Bald Faces,
Sandwich
Beautiful.
Dome. Like those are tough hikes, and they're tougher than a fair number of the 4,000 footers.
Yeah. So the first time I did Bald Faces, we did all 4 of them. Dave and I did all 4 of them. And so you have, what is it, Eastman, and then South Bald Face, North Bald Face, and Eagle Crag.
Yeah.
And we did those 4, and then we saw the dome, and we're like, I wonder what it's like to do the dome. Go up South Bald Face. That was a mistake. Again, Dave the athlete, we hit the rocks. Now everybody says, and all the references and everything you look at, they say, don't do it when it's wet. Don't do it when it's wet.
Right.
I thought it was going to be dry, and we hit those cliffs, and Dave was gone. He's just like a mountain goat. He's not normal. He's not human. I think he's got cloven feet. So he was gone, and I was left on my own, like try to figure out how to go over these ledges. And I came to a couple of them that were like beveled, and there's running water pouring down them, and they're slimy. And I just, my life passed before my eyes, and actually was kind of boring. So I did scramble up over those rocks, and managed to get to the top. But that was quite a hike. That's really wow.
Yeah,
there's no 4,000 footer that is going to put that one in the dust. That's a pretty tough hike right there.
Yeah, it sure is. Generally, people do it counterclockwise.
Yeah.
But hey.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Welch Dickey here. You know what I mean? It's like people typically do it counter because of Welch.
Yeah.
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 But hey, who knew?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that one I did do counterclockwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's so ingrained over here at Welch Dickey that if you're coming down Welch going clockwise, and people have done the trail before that you're passing, they'll get on your case like, what are you doing? Like, I've had people like verbally attack me for coming down Welch. Like, it's okay, I got this.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Yeah. But anyway.
And Ken, so you've hit these 100 peaks across the two lists. What would you say is your handful of favorite mountains that you've hiked?
Wow. Lafayette, Lincoln, that ridge walk is second to none. Actually, my son is search and rescue out in Tahoe, California, and he bought me a book for Christmas of the 100 most popular hikes in the world, and Lafayette and Lincoln is one of them.
Oh yeah.
Which that's just a beautiful hike. The Bald Faces, really, really gorgeous. Some of the littler ones that people probably aren't familiar with if they're not doing lists, like Rogers Ledge, the view out there is just amazing. But yeah, I think those are some of the, I'm trying to think what else are like some of the more memorable ones. Obviously some of the presidentials are, the presidentials, they're the jewel and the crown of the peaks. But even though I did Washington just a few months ago with Keith, I got to say I'm not a fan anymore. You get to the top, there's 300-400 people up there.
Yeah, I know.
It takes a little bit of the prestige away.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to defend Mount Washington is that there's nothing better than going in there and getting a couple of hot dogs.
Oh, you're not kidding.
Hike, which is great.
Yeah.
Like, that is the one thing I every time I complain about the crowds, I'm like, well, there's hot dogs.
Yeah. Keith thought he had lost me, which isn't uncommon. I got a GPS system that is broken. But I was in there having a bowl of chili. He should have known better.
That's too funny.
So can you get into a little bit about the new book? What's the name of the new book and the sort of the format and talk a little bit about the process of writing this one?
So the new, because everybody was really on my case about writing one about the 52. I had no desire to write another book. Like I said, I'm really not an author. But everyone kept saying you got to do the 52. You got to do. So the second one is called "They Said They Wanted More." So it's kind of puts it back on them. And it's about the 52. But one of the things I did differently in this book is I reached out to more contributors. So I have Lieutenant Nealon, Fish and Game, that gave an article. I have Ken McGray, who authors the guidebook on the 52, turned in an article. Another author, Matt Landry. Dan Schwensky, I can't pronounce his last name. You know who I'm talking about? Yeah. Dan Schwensky. Yeah. He's written some books. Oh, yeah.
He's like a historian, right?
Yeah. He wrote an article, wonderful articles. And then I had about 7 or 8 other hikers that turned in articles, funny stories that happened to them on different hikes. So it's spread out a little bit more, these are like all interspersed in there.
That's neat.
And then I've done some research. So when I'm huffing and puffing and can barely make it, and for some reason, these other 3 guys that I hike with, they say I whine and complain, and I don't think that's true at all. But when I'm struggling, I would just tell them, I always say, it's small lung syndrome. I've got small lung syndrome, and so it's hard to breathe, and then also altitude sickness. I'm a seacoast guy. I was born and raised in Portsmouth, so if I get above 1,000 feet, so I scientifically break that down in the book. Like it's science. Follow the science, right? Don't we hear that a lot today? Follow the science. It's science, and I get into that, and they bust my chops about the weather. So there's like a little side article in there on how a mountain man tells the weather, and so it's humorous. It's all factual. They get mad at me. They're popular. Like Ian, you got to tell the dentist story.
Oh yeah. So my dentist is over in Hillsborough. I lived right next door to it, and I went to get my teeth cleaned. And the dental hygienist went back, and the dentist assistant asked her if that was the Ian Kenney. And so the dental assistant came in, and she was like, "Are you the one in the book?" And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." She's like, "They said it would be fun." I was like, "Oh, Jesus, yeah, no, that is me. Yeah, I hike with him." I was like, "Wow,
funny."
Yep,
it's pretty funny.
It's funny. It's a small world.
Yeah, it is.
And Dave is really known. When he was chief of police, he's connected with so many people, and now he's in municipal insurance. He's connected with more town people, managers, and things like that. And people that are in hiking, they'll say, "Hey, I just bought this book, and I noticed that was you on the cover. You were in that book." And so he's like, "Yeah." So I made these guys famous, and you'd think they'd be more appreciative, but man, they ride me like a jockey on Buttercup. I mean, it's horrible.
Having close friends is important because you don't want they will keep you in check. As soon as you start blowing up, they will bring you back to earth for sure. So
true. That.
So any close search and rescue calls, any field attempts at hikes, any good stories around getting in trouble out there, because that's really what we care about the most.
So I am a hard learner.
Right now they're looking at each other like, should I tell them this story?
Yeah, there's something
brewing.
So I'm 63 now, and something happens, when you get into those 60s, things change. And Ian is the youngest, and I'm 63, and he always wants to hike on these like 90-degree days. So they call me PK for Pastor Ken, and like, "Hey PK, let's do a hike." And I'm like, no, it's too hot. Oh, come on, So we had done Smarts Mountain, and in the winter, and we got halfway, snowshoeing, which I detest, and I was just dying. I had given blood, and I didn't realize. Didn't realize that after you give blood, your red blood cells are gone, and so you don't have things to carry oxygen to the rest of your body.
I would have never thought that would be a thing. Who would have thought?
It is a huge... Don't give blood and hike, I'll tell you. At least not within the same proximity. Yeah. So we turned around that first time in the winter. I just couldn't breathe, and I might have been whining a little bit. I mean... So he calls me up, let's go hiking. I'm like, it's hot, it's like 90. It's not, it's only 80. So we go and do Smarts Mountain. He told me it was going to be like a 7-mile hike. I only brought 2 liters of water, and that that's my fault. I do carry a life straw. So we start hiking, and it's fairly warm, and it's muggy. It's humid. It's muggy. Dear God, we get out there. I struggled all the way out. I ran out of energy. I had already drank 1 liter of water just getting there, and that's really not a lot. But by the time we were coming back, I mean, the sun was, it was noon. It was 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
That hot afternoon sun.
And when you hit the rock, the heat was wafting up off of the rock as well as down, from the sun. And I felt like I was in an oven just being baked on every direction. And I had run out of water, and I started getting, dehydrated and... it's heat sickness. I think it's not it's not like sunstroke. I think it's like heat exhaustion. That's it. And so I mean, like I just about like passed out. I got wheezy, and I just sat there trying to recover. Recover your heart rate, your breathing, and it wasn't recovering too easy. And Ian was gracious. He stayed there with me. He didn't abandon me. And I'm like, it's really hot. And so I'm looking at him like, got any hydration on you? Like hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod. Like I'm dying over here. So he's gracious enough to give me half of what he had left over, which I suppose he's got to look after himself. Even though I was dying, I was perishing right there before his eyes. But that was a close call. That was, that just woke me up to... Sometimes you got to suck it up and carry the weight you need. The thing is about a life straw, they're absolutely useless if there's no water around. And there was like no water anywhere on that hike.
Yeah.
I would have just...
Yeah.
Were you saying it was winter? Or no, this is summer. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, same thing with winter, though, if everything's frozen.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So it was funny because he's like, it's only 80. We stopped at a store because I was just going to buy hydration. I didn't care what they had liquid. I probably would have drank brake fluid if they had. So, and I asked the proprietor, how hot is it today? And both him and his wife simultaneously in harmony said, it's 90. And I was like, there you go. I knew it was going to be way too hot. How do you defend yourself, Ian, from the...
Best part about this hike is when we get to the store, he goes and he buys a plain bottle of water, and he buys a flavored bottle of water. The plain bottle of water was dumped over his head, so he gets outside, unknowingly cracks the strawberry one, dumps it over his head, so all you can smell is strawberries the entire ride home.
Oh, jeez. That's awesome. Funny. So did you make it did you have to turn around, or did you make it to the top?
No, we made it in and out. Yeah, we summited and came back out.
Smarts is the one with that's got the fire tower on top, right? Is that the one with the cabin right up there, and then it's got the beautiful outhouse that's like wide open.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I had a close call on my my Pemi Loop. I did a Pemi Loop on a day that was supposed to be forecast to 95, so I started like people do at like 2:30 in the morning and got to Lafayette by about 11 or so, and that's when the heat started kicking in. I made it across Garfield Ridge Trail, but by the time I got to Bondcliff, it hit me. I had that heat exhaustion moment, and I was just I wouldn't say delirious, but I was fretting every step and wondering if I was going to get my goal was to get to that one water crossing that's below Bondcliff as you're heading back to Lincoln Woods Road.
Yep.
And thank God I made it, but man, it's scary.
Yeah.
It can really, because you do get to the point where you're soaked initially with sweat and your body's not cooling off, but then you stop sweating, and that's really scary.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this book it's out. You can get it on Amazon. We will we'll put a link in the show notes, and we'll do a little bit of advertising through a couple of posts on our Instagram and Facebook pages. So this would be a good book for anybody that's looking for a Christmas present for a hiker. If you haven't got the 4,000 footer book, you can get them as a twofer. And the way I would suggest that people do this is I would get both books, and it's just another tool in your arsenal, because not only is there's some good stories, and I haven't read the 52 with a View book yet, but there's some good stories in the 4,000 footer book. And I sort of look at it as another way that you can sort of get details on the hikes, because he does talk about, Ken talks about the terrain and the features of the mountains as well. So it's just another informational tool that you can utilize. Very good. So, Ken, one other area that I did want to ask you about, you're a pastor, and you deal with probably a lot of interesting topics. One of the things that I'm curious to get your perspective on is the sort of hiking culture in general, and sort of the good and the bad, and then maybe a little bit about your perspective about, is there anything that we can do in the hiking community to just be better from your perspective? Can you talk a little bit about, what you see amongst your fellow hikers?
Yeah, I would encourage anyone to hike. And I know with COVID, a lot of people have turned to the outdoors. We live in such a high, stressful community. Everybody's at such a breakneck speed doing everything that they do. And to just get out in nature is so refreshing. As a coach, especially doing wellness coaching sometimes with people, we have a sympathetic nervous system that kind of, it's the gas pedal. It's what makes us go and accomplish, but we can't live there. So there's a parasympathetic system that needs to be tapped into so that there's checks and balances. Mm-hmm. And something like getting out in nature is something that absolutely causes that parasympathetic nervous system to fire. It's relaxing. And I think that's wonderful. Like in my expression, I would say God gives us nature, and we turned around and turned it into cities. So I would encourage anyone to hike, and I've met wonderful people on the trails. And I find, moms out there laughing their heads off, having a blast. You see young kids, you see all kinds of people. It never amazes me. And then in the summer months, you got the tour buses coming. It looks like the United Nations out there, right? I mean, just like all kinds of people. And I think they do come in on tour buses because you have to get out of the trail as 50 people are going by. College students, you get to see what the latest sneakers are as they're going up, the presidentials or flip-flops. But one of the things that, this just really, we have to be better at leave no trace.
Oh,
when I did a sunrise, matter of fact, Ian was with us, and Ian's now wife was with us, and Dave, and we did a sunrise on Chicora. And as the sun came up, I was sitting on the rocks just watching the sun come up. And then as it came up, because it was dark, I didn't really see my surroundings that well. But when it came up, I looked down, and in the crevice right there at my feet was an empty beer can. Mm. And I'm like, come on, seriously, you hiked it in when it was 16 ounces. You can't hike it out when it's 0.5 ounces?
Yeah, that's a shame.
So that's where I think the hiking community as a whole can do a lot better. And sometimes I think it's probably the novice hikers that really, they don't understand it. They're just doing a weekend warrior type thing, and they don't understand, leave no trace means leave no trace. Coming down, what hike was it? Dave and I did. I think it was Osceola. And up comes this young girl, 22, with her boyfriend or husband or whatever, and he's listening to this boombox. Which
I hate that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But then what really got me is about another 1/10 of the mile down the trail, there's 3 batteries laying in the middle of the trail. Like his batteries died, he changed them, just left them in the trail and kept going. And I can't say it was him because I didn't see it, but I'm just putting 2 to 2 together. Maybe it's an unfair equation, but why are you leaving dead batteries in the trail? Just so a lot of times I'll pack stuff like that out myself because I just I don't like to see trash or things like that out there.
Yeah. And masks. Will you pick up the mask and stick it in your pack? Not I.
And the blue bags of dog poop.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. Oh.
It depends. I will pick that stuff up because I have because I just do work around the house, and I think COVID's turned me into a germ-phobic maniac anyway, but I have like those like surgical gloves, not surgical gloves, but like the gloves, and I have those in my pack sometimes, and if I see something really gross, I'll just put the gloves on and then like pick the gross thing up, put it in the trash bag, and then throw the glove away occasionally.
Yeah.
So I've picked up some gnarly stuff, and I have picked up those dog poop bags before.
Oh boy.
It is something.
Well, I wanted to go. I wanted to go back to Ken had said that he had been struggling for a year and a half with plantar fasciitis, and then he basically nothing was working, so he turned to the power of prayer to solve that. Can we dive into that a little bit here, because I think that there's a fair number of people that deal with these repetitive injuries, and whether it's through prayer or other means that if the physical therapy is not working. I'm curious, what do you think, Ken? I mean, obviously you're a pastor, so I think it's pretty clear that you feel like the power of prayer really solved it for you. But can you talk a little bit about it? Has plantar come back, or was it just a one-time fix for you?
No, it never came back. It never came back. It was very painful, and like I said, I had it for a year and a half. So it took me out of the woods. It took me out of hiking. It took me out of a lot of things. And I did go to a doctor. I did get a cortisone shot. I call it the stick from hell. That was one of the most painful things ever. I mean, he literally went right through my heel, like under that back heel bone.
Yeah, you're right. That's the worst.
That was really, that was something. And, like I said, almost every Sunday, we offer prayer for anyone who wants prayer for any need. Maybe it's a financial need, maybe it's a need in a relationship, or maybe it's something that they're struggling with a sickness or, a malady or something like that. We've seen things happen. We've seen people get healed. And I don't know, for some reason, like as the pastor, I'm like, maybe I should go for prayer. Because, it was a year and a half that I was out of this thing. And the guy that prayed for me, he prayed over me, and he said, like, when I went up, he said, like, from a 1 to 10, he goes, where would you say your pain is right now? And this was after preaching 2 services and standing for a long time. I said, seriously, like right now it's like a 9.5. And he prayed over me, and he goes, what's it now? And I said, seriously, it's like a 9.5. Like nothing happened. He goes, well, just go home and give it some time. I'm like, all right. I went home, I went to bed. Monday I woke up and it was noticeable. It dropped down to a 7. And I'm like, and I noticed it, and that got me really excited. So the next week I went back to him and I said, hey, I want you to pray for me again. And it went down to like a 5.5. And like week after week for 5 consistent weeks. And that last week it was gone. That's great. So I was a little skittish, and I'm like, I'm not going to go do an 11-mile hike and get out there 6 miles and it kicks in and I'm in pain. And, so I just started like a 1/10 of a mile, 1/4 of a mile, 1/2 a mile, couple miles, 6 miles, 10 miles. And then, after I'm doing 10, 13 miles in Pawtuckaway, I'm like, I think I'm ready to,
walk on water.
But yeah, I'm going to push the envelope, and I'm going to go for a 4,000 footer. And and I never had any problems again after that point. Wow. So
what is your professional assessment here? What happened? Do we have a miracle?
Oh, hey, yeah, I would think so. I grew up in the church. You might be interested in this. My story is I grew up in the Pentecostal denomination, and then I was exposed to the Catholic side of things on my dad's side of the family. So I'm like a hybrid. I sort of experienced both faiths growing up, and I totally believe in the power of prayer and miracles and everything.
So you went from left to right, and I went from right to left. I grew up Catholic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now I'm Pentecostal.
Oh, come on, really? Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I love and respect both faiths, and I think it's great. I've seen personally a lot of interesting things over my long 52 years, Mike. But I'm all in with the baby Jesus.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I hike with the guys with Keith and Dave and Ian is because I firmly believe that anyone can be rehabilitated. And I haven't seen a lot of success yet, but I'm still hanging in there with these guys and seeing a little bit. Oh man!
It's sort of just one other side topic. It's funny, between Pentecostals or Protestants and Catholics, it's like Pentecostals are more like give your burden to God and He'll take care of it, whereas the Catholics are more like, wear that wool jacket and suffer because it's good for, those poor souls in purgatory and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a difference in approach, but fun. We could talk about that for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Yeah. So I guess I ran through all the questions that I had. Again, like I said, we will be posting up in the show notes links to details on how you can purchase both books. And, I guess my final thought, Ken, on this is, as I was going through and sort of putting the script together, I've recently completed the some hiking list myself, and I did try to take a little bit of time to reflect on sort of what are the key points that I realized around, what were the epiphanies for me. And the first one that I came up with was that, we do this activity called peak bagging, and I put a little post up on the 4,000 footer group, and the first point I basically said is, what I learned from this is that, you should be looking to bag more friends than peaks through the activities that you do with this hiking. And it sounds like you've really embodied that with, your core group of friends, and then having the ability to sort of reach out and make relationships with the search and rescue teams, and then actually getting, it sounds like 7 or 8 people to contribute to your next project. So I think that it sounds like you've got a great story to tell as far as doing this in a way where you've built a lot of different relationships. So I don't know, that was my kind of takeaway from reading your book and then thinking about like how I completed my lists and sort of watching you complete yours.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think what it taught me is that if you set a goal and if you have enough stick-to-itiveness, no matter what that goal is, you can accomplish it. And it was just a matter of, healing from that dreaded hike and getting back out and doing another one, and then another one and another one. And, congratulations on finishing a couple of lists yourself. And I think that people, just start off with one smaller hike and enjoy it. The other thing is enjoy the whole process. It's not about seeing that summit. It's about finding the peak you want to do, looking at the maps, picking the trails, packing your pack, making sure you get the 10 essentials, all of that stuff. We, the guys I hike with, we constantly bust on one another. We're picking on one another, making fun of one another. But honestly, these guys are the best. We've saved each other's bacon, and we pulled each other's bacon out of the fire a number of times. And, I've done a lot of solo hiking, but there's nothing like, being out there in the woods with a close friend, sharing that experience, meeting other people on the hikes. It's all part of the wonderfulness of hiking. It's really
great.
If I could, are you guys getting ready to segue into another?
We're going to move into search and rescue, but I have one question for you, but go ahead. Whatever you want to say.
Well, I'll answer your question.
Well, you were ready to talk about something, right?
I was just going to say that Dave and Ian and Keith and I, we started another out branch. We've started a little group called White Mountain Approved, where we are now starting to do gear reviews. We're on Instagram under White Mountain Approved.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Okay.
Yeah. So we're doing gear reviews. We are going to start selling some novelty T-shirts.
Starting to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what got this set up.
Yeah.
All right, I got it. Okay.
Yeah,
I have seen it.
Anybody wants to check that out, and we're going to do some fun things, such as, like in the month of May, if you can spot Dave on a trail and recognize him, we'll stop and shoot a gear review right then and there with you. Like you can review a piece of gear that you like or, you particularly care for. So we're going to mix it up, do some nutty things, and just have some fun with it. Again, just kind of like, working with and bringing the whole hiking community together a little bit.
That's fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah, I will. I'll add that to the show notes as well, and then we can link that across our social media. What's the newest gear that you guys are looking at right now?
I did a review on a couple of different headlamps, from a Energizer from Walmart to a Black Diamond to the newest Petzl, the 450 lumen one that just came out, which is now my new favorite. And I did a review on those. We did, what do you got, Ian? What else have we done?
We've got some on some base layer. We're doing some videos. We're trying to have fun with it. We've got some just quick videos of us. We're trying to do it on the trail, on the peaks when we're there. with nice views in the background. And then we're also doing just pictures of the gear with us using it and explaining a little bit.
Yeah, we're just having fun with it. We're just saying, we're saying, we do all our gear reviews from the peaks of mountains, not from living rooms. Just we're just being nutty and silly and crazy.
That's great. Well,
Awesome.
Right. So here's my question. Critical incident stress debriefings. I'm sure you've done some.
With the Raymond PD.
As a chaplain. Because our first rescue here, first story is actually a recovery. So I'm always fascinated to hear about those services and maybe just to talk about it briefly, how you handle critical incident stress debriefings, if that's what you're doing for the fire department. PD. Okay. Maybe it's a little different, but certainly in search and rescue, we've had our share of events that have called for a chaplain to come in and talk with us and this and that, and maybe just to talk about that briefly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things about critical stress debriefing is what you're trying to circumvent is people developing post-traumatic stress syndrome. PTSD, the way I like to define it, PTSD is a natural response to an unnatural event. In other words, it's not natural for us to have to try to rescue dying people or recover a dead body. That's not normal. Right. And so when people encounter those kinds of high stress situations, it can leave a lingering effect. And some people it doesn't bother at all. Some people maybe it bothers, but they just repress it, and that's not good either. And some people it just physically and outwardly bothers them. And so if people can talk about that, talk about what it was that bothered them about the incident, why it bothered them. Sometimes it's just a catharsis to talk it out, just get it off of your shoulders. And I would just say that if there's anyone that really struggles, even more, with an incident like that, maybe some coaching, as a life coach, I see people move forward in all kinds of situations. I know my brother was a firefighter down in Sarasota, Florida, and his wife died early, and he was leaving the fire department. Everybody told him, don't leave. He's got 13 years in, but he was also a paramedic, and he told me, he said, listen, I just couldn't do that anymore. Pulling bodies out of cars and stuff like that. And he says, I just couldn't deal with it anymore. So it builds up. Sometimes there's post-traumatic stress from seeing something in the moment that's, live and it's shocking and it stays with you. And sometimes it's a slow, repetitive build. Right. You go on a rescue or a recovery again and again and again. And it's like it builds. It's something that escalates.
Yeah, because that's the angle that I've sort of been cognizant of with search and rescue, and I try to watch members and I watch myself with that, and I've always thought that, like, even though this is just an ankle fracture, this is really stressful. It's like it's midwinter, somebody's freezing up there. We got to hustle. It definitely adds up over the years. So that's interesting. What should people look out for in their own lives, like any red flags or signs, like
if it's a memory that you just won't leave your mind, it's just like stuck in your mind and you keep dwelling on it, keep thinking on it, that would be a red flag. If it starts impairing your sleep or your diet, those are other red flags. If you find yourself maybe retreating inside of yourself a little bit more than you normally would, that would be another red flag. So those are all things to look for.
Substance abuse, I'm sure you see that too.
Substance abuse, self-medication.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, what do you cover with life coaching? I know that's a pretty broad question, but what topics?
So life coaching, the simplest explanation is it's not mentoring, it's not consulting, it's not counseling. Life coaching is a relationship around a conversation that a person has with a coach, where the coach is trained specifically to listen very, very deeply and then ask questions to draw out knowledge that a person has but they don't know they have. We believe that a person is whole and complete in and of themselves. They have the goods, they have the answers, they just need help figuring that out.
Gotcha.
And so when you ask these thought-provoking questions that create an aha, like all of a sudden, the synapses are firing and things are happening, then they come up with their solution. They come up with the goals for those solutions. They come up with who's going to hold them accountable, and they actually act on it because it's their ideas. They've got skin in the game. It all came from them. Years ago I used to do counseling, and I would tell people do A, B, and C. They wouldn't do A, B, and C. But when they come up with A, B, and C, they have ownership of it, and there's like 90% more likelihood that they're going to act on it.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, how I've always thought about that is like, when you're hiking sometimes you're on like in a wilderness section or something, and you know how to hike, you're prepared, but you can't find the trail, and you have to stop and be like, did I take a wrong turn or whatever? And then you have to sort of look around, and then all of a sudden, like, the trail just appears in front of you. I feel like a lot of times, like in our lives, like we're on our trail, we just sort of step off for a minute, and we just can't see that path. And I think I've had a little bit of experience with sort of mentors and life coaches, and I think the way you describe it is sort of like you're helping to just sort of like see the path when we couldn't see it clearly, but we're close to it, but we just didn't get on it right. So
right, yeah, that's a great analogy. I mean, I never miss trails or turns or anything like that, do I? Never. They're always like, "Hey, PK, when you go down that trail, let's taking you back out to Route 16." I'm like, I don't know.
But when you do that, and then all of a sudden, like, you stop and you're like, oh yeah, now it's so obvious, but it wasn't a minute ago.
Yeah. No, I always tell them like, well, no, I thought it was a deer down there or something, and
It's
a moose.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, so do we want to get into some search and rescue news?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right. So this first one it's a sad story. So it was a hiker fatality on Lonesome Lake. So we'll spend a little bit of time on this because I do want to read a little bit from George Gallagher is the name of the gentleman who passed away on Lonesome Lake, and his wife was kind enough to post some information on social media, and there's a really poignant obituary that they put out for him. But basically on October 23rd at 8 a.m., New Hampshire Fish and Game was notified of a hiker that was receiving CPR on the Lonesome Lake Trail. So it was a 53-year-old male from Beverly who was hiking with a partner, and he had collapsed suddenly on the trail, and they were about a mile from the trailhead. And fortunately there was 2 EMTs that had happened to be hiking in the same area, so they were actually able to immediately start performing CPR. Unfortunately, their efforts were they weren't able to revive him, and later on the news came out that the gentleman that had collapsed, his name was George Gallagher. He was attempting, it sounds like, my guess is he was doing the Kinsman, so he was pursuing the 4,000 footer list. So he had completed 31 of the 48 4,000 footers, and he was heading up to do the Kinsmans on that day. And his cousin had written a nice sort of tribute to just say that he wanted to say thank you for all of the the outreach and thank the hiking community for all their thoughts. And then later on, his wife had posted a nice note here, which I'll read. So she had basically just said that, many of you have reached out to pay your respects, tribute, and kind words of sympathy and support. And I'd like to share this in hopes that you can all read it. She says that I've tried to respond to each and every one of you. Your kindness has brought me so much peace during this unexpected loss of such a loved man. And thank you forever, from Cynthia Gallagher. So she said that George was laid to rest yesterday morning at the base of a small shaded hill in plot number 31, which was appropriate because he had completed 31 of the 4,000 footers. He brought his hiking shoes and his compass so that he may always find his way home. She said their hearts are broken right now. They'll miss him always and forever. And she again wanted to pass her thanks on to the hiking community for all their kind words. And at the end of the obituary, it basically gave a nice tribute to George, which said that he had a zest for life and was always up for an adventure. He had recently developed a love for hiking and a quest to hike all 48 4,000 footers of the White Mountains of New Hampshire. He had recently completed number 31, and they end with a quote, which is, "I'm off to follow another trail, and you know how I love to roam, but I know full well at the end of this trail I'll find my eternal home." So George, hope you're doing well, and it's a sad story, but I think that his wife really sent off a nice tribute to him.
Yeah, it is sad. Beautiful story, though. Classic case of critical incident stress debriefing. Our team was actually doing a training pretty much a quarter mile up the road, so they were right there, and they responded quickly and helped out.
Yeah. It's like, we had Chris from Solo on, and even he talks about how like you don't have that normal time frame to get a reaction, but even in this case, like there was EMTs right on the scene pretty much right away. So it's just unfortunate.
Yep.
It's very sad, but at least it's a comfort in knowing that he went doing something he really, really loved, and in a beautiful setting on Lonesome Lake Trail. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place.
Yeah, no doubt. It's when we did our last hike stomp, we were looking down on Lonesome Lake, and it's a beautiful area there. So
yeah.
So all right, so let's move on here to the next one here. So this is on November 11th at 7:40 p.m. Fish and Game was notified by the New Hampshire State Police about a group of students and staff from Camp Wadiko. They had become lost in the woods. I feel like if you're like running a camp, like that's like 101. You can't get your people lost in the woods. But I guess one student was experiencing a medical issue and was in need of assistance. So this was in Black Pond in Windsor, New Hampshire. I don't even know where that is.
I'm not familiar with that. I mean, the name is familiar, but I'm thinking of some other Isn't there a Black Pond somewhere near one of the 48s? I thought there was.
Black Pond.
I don't know.
Sure. Yeah,
oh, Black Pond Bushwhack.
Oh, yeah. That's
going to Owl's Head.
Right. Yep.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. But I guess they were... So this was Hillsborough Fire and EMS responded, and they were able to get all-terrain vehicles out to the area. But they did have to hike through the woods about a half mile or so before contacting the group.
Yeah, it sounds like a bushwhack.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Were they all bushwhacking? I don't get it.
I don't know. There was 9 students and staff. They were able to hike out without assistance while awaiting for the ATVs to get there. And I guess by midnight, all the students and staff arrived back at the school or the camp or whatever they were at. So, interesting.
Oh, that's a good turnout. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Definitely a good outcome. Now we're back over to Chicora, right?
Yeah. This is we've heard this story before. So this was on November 9th at 3 p.m. Fish and Games notified that a hiker was suffering from a hip injury on Champney Falls. So older gentleman, 72-year-old gentleman from Warwick, Rhode Island, was coming down and he tripped and injured his hip. I mean, that trail's got a lot of roots on it, so I can definitely imagine that. He was only about a half a mile from the trailhead, but there's no cell phone connection there, so I guess a hiker drove down, and she was able to alert the Forest Service, so they got on the scene to help him out and assist him out about a half a mile or so. So he was at the trailhead around 4 o'clock. So pretty easy one for the Conway Fire Department. I guess they took him to the Memorial Hospital for treatment.
Yeah, she had to drive 10 miles to get service.
Yeah, exactly. That's not a good area. So anything on the Kank, the lower Kank on the North Conway side, has no cell connection. So you're kind of screwed out there if you get an injury. This is the last one, but this is my favorite one. We're going to go out to Alaska to Denali. Remember when we had Jeff Rogers on and he was talking about how like it's like a little crazy in Denali this year and that there was like too many hikers out there and they were sort of, I guess the deal with Denali is you go with like a small group and then if like 1 or 2 people bail out, you can connect with other people. But what's happening is that all these like groups are forming on the mountain and they don't know each other, so they have no idea what the skills or experience level is, and it's causing like a mess. So I think the Forest Service out there was like warning people not to be not to be idiots on Denali, but we have somebody who decided to be an idiot.
So what happened?
So this guy is a doctor. So a doctor is facing federal charges after falsely reporting in May that a pair of climbers he had joined in a makeshift expedition on Denali had fallen ill and needed a high-risk helicopter rescue. So Ken, this is something you could think about doing the next time you're not feeling good.
I'm all ears.
Just basically, you could say, like, your hiking crew needs assistance. So what this doctor did is he was hiking with a group. That group fell apart. He connected with these two other hikers, and apparently, for whatever reason, they weren't able to get to the summit. So this guy, he called in and said that he had a satellite phone. So he called in and basically said that he was with two other hikers that he had just connected with, and that they were showing signs of altitude sickness, and they needed a helicopter rescue. So they went in and got these folks, but it turned out that the two other climbers that the doctor was talking about later told investigators that they had never experienced any shock or hypothermia, and they had spent hours trying to persuade this doctor to rope up with them and descend the mountain, but the doctor refused, insisting that he was going to stay put, and he told the other two climbers that the Park Service was obligated to rescue them because they had hypothermia. So basically this doctor was refusing to go down and was like, I'm going to wait for the helicopter ride, and he was using these other two hikers that he was with as the excuse to say they have to come rescue me. And it put the helicopter pilots are at 17,000 feet, so it puts them a lot of risk. So,
Doctor of deception.
They're going to go after this guy. Yeah, exactly. So,
wow, that's messed up. I wonder if he'll get the helicopter bill. Holy moly, it's never cheap. That's for sure.
Yeah, but that's so Ken, next time you get elevation sickness on Mount Willard, don't call for a helicopter.
Yeah.
Mount Willard.
That's a good one. Yeah. I actually became friends with Luke Kaladish, who is one of the Black Hawk pilots out of Concord.
Okay.
And he gave us a tour of the facility, a tour of the equipment. Those machines are absolutely beautiful. And, they're incredibly skilled pilots, but you're right. Every time they go out, it's putting them at risk. You never know what's going to happen in a piece of machinery like that. And so to put in a false call like that, that's pretty crazy.
Mm. Yeah, those guys are great, aren't they? Good crew down there.
I'll tell you.
And to know that it's all volunteer. Like, they're not sitting there at the hangar waiting. They're at home, Mike. I don't know if you knew that. Air National Guard, they're all just volunteers. They get the call at home while they're making dinner, and we gotta go.
Yeah, no, I think Ty's book on the Last Traverse talks a lot about that structure.
I got into a problem on Mount Hayes too with Keith, and again, it was just one of these hot days, and I was hydrating better, but I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I almost blacked out, and I was trying to recover, and I couldn't stop the world from spinning. Like, everything was spinning, and I couldn't stop it, and I must have sat there for like 15 minutes. And finally, Keith goes, "Do you want me to call 911? And I was like, "Oh, hell no. I write books to search and rescue. I will die out here. It'll be a recovery before they come." I mean, it's not going to happen. So I literally just stood up and just started step after step and walked out. But yeah, no, I'm not going to call any helicopters anytime soon.
Yeah, that's a common theme with like search and rescue, or just people associated with the community to some degree. It's like, nope, hell no. It's a riot.
Yeah. It must be something about Mount Hayes too, because I've been in that area twice, and both times was like the most oppressive heat I've ever experienced in the Whites, like just drenching sweat.
Yeah.
So it must be the area.
Well, that's a good one.
All right, so. Yeah, but that's the search and rescue. So do we have any time to do a White Mountain history topic, or do we get to cut this?
I don't see why not. You guys good for a few more minutes?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah,
Okay.
Go for it.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
All right, I got one. So we'll just do one quick one. So Six Husbands Trail. Have you? Oh, so Ken, that's the other thing. Ken and Ian, you guys, the next one for you is the terrifying 25.
Ian's down for that. Ian's down for that. They abandoned me on Morgan, Mount Morgan and Percival. I went up the ladders.
Yeah, the ladders.
I went up the ladders and made it in the cave, and then we're all like, "See you later." And so I had to do the cliffs beyond that by myself. But yeah, I don't know. I think to do the terrifying 25, there's certain options, but then there's certain ones that you have to do.
Sure. Yeah.
And what's the one I'm thinking about? What's the worst one up there? It's that canyon. It's the Huntington Ravine.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know. I would probably do it if I had an experienced guide that brought me up there.
That would be Mike. Mike will take you.
No, Stomp, you can take them.
Just watch Mike's video. He just made a video about it, and we joke around about the people on their cell phones that like fall into manholes and things like that, and he's going up Huntington holding his phone with one hand. He's like, 2 legs and 1 arm getting up Huntington. Like, this is great.
In the rubber boots? Were you the guy in the rubber boots?
No rubber boots.
That's great.
So
I've taken a black Sharpie and blacked out all the terrifying 25 trails in my guidebook, so I know that I'll never hit them.
All right. Well, anyway, so we're going to do it. So this is called a little bit of White Mountain history. So the Six Husbands Trail is in the presidential range. So this is on the terrifying 25 list, and it's an interesting sort of history about this trail. So Stomp, I didn't realize this. So Six Husbands, basically where it's positioned now is it's off of the Great Gulf Trail. So you go down the Great Gulf, and then you can continue right up the Great Gulf head wall, or you can continue and actually sort of bang a right and go up the Sphinx Trail, or you can cut up to Madison Gulf. But if you keep going a little ways, you take a right, and then Six Husbands is this really tricky trail that, like, the top section isn't too bad, but the lower section has like these ladders. It's this really sort of mossy area where a lot of people get turned around in the lower section. But Six Husbands is it's on the terrifying 25. It's super steep, and it is a trail that dates back to the early 1900s. And this guy named Warren Hart had been the guy he's a trail builder, and he had cut a lot of the trails in the Great Gulf. And I didn't realize this, but this trail had originally, so I guess this guy, he built the Great Gulf Trail as it is right now. But I guess the original Six Husbands Trail was cut in 1909 and 1910 by Hart and in a volunteer AMC trail crew. And it began on the Tuckerman Ravine Trail and then came across the Alpine Garden, and then it must have crossed the auto road near the, near mile marker 6, and then descended down into the Great Gulf. So it was a much longer trail. I don't know what the name of that trail is now, but I can't remember. Weedamo maybe, or something like that. But it descended down into the Great Gulf and then eventually came down into where it exists now, ending on the summit of Mount Jefferson. But it's basically now it's just a 2.3 mile trail. That's sort of just the western part of the trail. So I guess the deal with this trail is that it was named after, I got to make sure that I got this. So yeah, so the trail name is connected to Chief Weedamo, and she was a female Indian chief of the Pocasset tribe. So Weedamo Falls has been named for her, and then the western portion of this trail was named for, apparently she had 6 husbands. So I don't know how that works. I don't know if they all died or if there was some sort of a divorce situation going on back in the day, but
she told them to go hike up this trail, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of trails down in the Great Gulf. So there's the Wamsuta Trail, I think, is what was sort of cut up between that and the Six Husbands. So there's a lot of like sketchy information on here, but Chief Weedamo, they think she'd only actually married 5 times, and her husband Wamsuta was the most famous, and they think that he might have been like her first or second husband. But they basically named those trails in that area over, in honor of, these early Native Americans. And, 6 husbands back in the day is pretty interesting. She must have lived quite a life if she was named a chief of a tribe, and then she's got all these different husbands. So
we have the Weetamoos over here in Thornton. There are 2 peaks that are nestled between Route 49 and the Sandwich Range. It's a bushwhack for the 2 peaks, but I'm guessing it's associated. People around here call it Weetamoo.
Weetamoo, yeah. So it is associated. And then I think, this original long trail was called 6 Husbands the whole way up. And then I think what they likely did was they had, they just put the name Wamsuta onto one half of it, and then 6 Husbands on the other section of it. So it's pretty interesting.
Beautiful area. The Great Gulf is amazing. Beautiful. Have you been in there, Ken?
I don't think so. I don't think I've been in there.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with like Lord of the Rings, like the that dense forest that they all go into there.
Yeah.
Man, it's just old growth and just there's an ancient feel about it. Beautiful place.
Have either of you guys read Forrest and Craig?
Mm-mm.
It's a big, thick book about all the New England mountain history. Very interesting.
Oh.
Very interesting.
A recent book or an older book?
It's an older one.
Okay.
Yep. I'm pretty sure Steve has it over in the Mountain Wanderer.
Oh, I'm sure. Good old Steve.
Yeah, I got to check that out. I would say, like, if you haven't been in the Great Gulf, especially, I think people have this assumption that, because you've got 6 Husbands and you've got Madison Gulf and you've got the Great Gulf and you've got Sphinx Trail, I think people have this assumption that it's like really not a good place to go if you're not interested in climbing these super steep areas. But just the Great Gulf itself, there's not a lot of elevation gain. I think it's a 9-mile trail. And I think the first 6 miles or so, 7 miles is really you only gain about 1,800 or 2,000 feet of elevation. And in the summertime, it just follows along I think it's the West Peabody River. And it's just an awesome area where you just stop and you can, there's so many cool waterfalls and areas where you can sort of just dip your feet into the river, sit there and have a nice lunch or whatever. So it's really a cool day hike if you wanted to do that. And, you just go do an out and back. You're not going to see a ton of views, but you'll see some amazing waterfalls and some awesome views of, different water features if you're down for that. It's kind of a unique type of day if you did that, but I definitely recommend it. You do a 10-mile hike and it's not a lot of elevation gain. Very cool. So anything else, Stomp?
No, man, this has been a great show. I thank you guys for making the trip over to the Woodpecker Studio and trying out the new gear. And this one will be out well before the holidays, so that's great. I wish you the best of luck with the book release, and thank you for everything you're doing for search and rescue, and that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the invitation to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
Is this your first podcast ever, Ken?
Yes, it is. I've never done one before.
Happy to be the first. Very good. So, Stomp, I will send you over the audio for this, and I promise it's not going to be screwed up this time, I swear.
Okay, sounds good. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered on today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information on SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until next time, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words that describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Lieutenant James Neeland, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.